It's a big week for crypto, and the question is, are we going to be rejected here at the all time high and the resistance that it represents, or are we about to see a blue sky breakout? At the time of recording, Bitcoin is sitting at about $105,000 almost, and it has reached into the range of the all time high, with it actually closing the highest close in all of Bitcoin history. Unfortunately, though, it has not broken above this wick high at about $109,000, and it did reach about $107,000 before putting in that highest close of all time and then being slightly rejected here. I don't think this is an official rejection until we start breaking down below these closures around $103,000. And if we do break down below these wicks or about $100,000, then I would definitely not be surprised if we head back down into probably the low $90,000 range at least. We did fill the price target for this descending wedge, which was about at $103,000, and we even saw a little bit of a pump above it. But if you look down here at the MACD, it is trying to cross to the downside. And if it does get rejected here, then we're in danger of putting in a double top formation, which in the last bull market did indicate the very end of the bull cycle. I'm not saying that this is going to be the end of the bull cycle because I still think that we're probably going to continue to the upside until probably around October-ish, at least if the 4-year cycles are still intact. And it does look like we're about to see the 50-day moving average crossing above the 200-day moving average again, which is considered a golden cross and generally a bullish indication. One thing that could nullify this rejection that we might be seeing is that JP Morgan has officially announced that they're going to be allowing clients to buy Bitcoin, which was announced by the CEO, Jamie Dimon, who previously said that if he saw JP Morgan employees buying Bitcoin, then he was going to fire them. So this is definitely a change in the narrative coming from Jamie Dimon, and it could be a boon for the industry, allowing a whole bunch of money to pour into Bitcoin, which will obviously push Bitcoin to the upside, and a rising tide lifts all boats, as they say. In my opinion, though, I think that the real reason why we saw this pump over the weekend is because people are expecting us to get a positive vote and probably a passing of a pro crypto bill as early as today, but we already had a vote on this bill previously and it did get rejected. According to this article on Yahoo News, it looks like progressive groups are marshaling an opposition to the crypto bill. We've seen Elizabeth Warren's anti crypto army continuing to push back against any kind of pro crypto legislation that could be coming out for crypto, mostly because Donald Trump supports cryptocurrency. And these progressives are going to do anything they can to oppose anything that Donald Trump does. So I wouldn't be surprised if this gets pushed back a little bit further or it continues to fail to actually pass. And with the price of Bitcoin being on the rise over the weekend in anticipation of the bill being passed, even if it does get passed, I wouldn't be surprised if it is a buy the rumor and sell the news situation. As I've said in the past, these all time highs are going to be acting as resistance as we continue back to the upside. And right now, it looks like that resistance is coming into play. And I think that a little bit of a sell off or consolidation here would actually be probably pretty healthy. If we zoom out here a little bit, you can see that we still haven't reached the price target for this giant cup and handle formation that I've been talking about for like over a year now. And that price target is still at about $120,000. But a lot of people are expecting us to break out to like $200,000. And honestly, I think that 120,000 is probably going to be around the place where we start to top here. If we do see this rejection here starting to play out, then I wouldn't be surprised if we come back down into the low $90,000 range and then start to bounce before making it to that price target of 120,000. And if that does happen, then I think this is going to be a rising wedge formation, which is actually a bearish indicator. And with this coming in around the end of the 4-year cycle, or at least where it traditionally lies, I wouldn't be surprised if that is where we start to top out and then we come back down to fill the price target for this rising wedge, which I've never actually measured before, but let's just see where it plays out. How you figure out the price target for one of these wedges is you take the height of the wedge and then you extend it from the breakdown point at the top of the wedge, and that would give us a price target of about roughly $60,000. So, in my opinion, we might have one more significant push to the upside, and maybe altcoins are going to be seeing parabolic gainers that are way more significant than the price action that Bitcoin has ahead of it. But honestly, I do expect this bull market to end a lot sooner than many people are expecting it to. And with a lot of people expecting it to go deep into next year, and for Bitcoin to fly to $200,000 or even higher, I think this is a much more likely scenario because people's price targets start to get really out of whack at the end of the bull market. And with all of the institutional investment that we've been seeing in this bull market, I think the price of Bitcoin is going to become a lot more risk averse because these institutional players are not actually just trying to get rich quick. What they aim to do is to lock in some great profits for their books at the end of the year, which will incentivize more people to actually buy into their funds. With the top of the cycle coming around the end of the year here, I wouldn't be surprised if they do lock in some of those profits. And with institutional players holding the majority of Bitcoin at this point, or at least a much bigger portion than they ever have in the past, that selling pressure is going to be pretty significant. And I think it'll definitely be enough to push us down to $60,000 or so. But in positive news, we're probably not going to be seeing as significant of a sell off as we have in the past because those institutional players are much less susceptible to dealing with panic, and they're going to have a lot more money to go ahead and buy the dip whenever the price does get down more into a reasonable level. Looking at the Ethereum chart, it has seen some resistance here at the 200-day moving average, as I mentioned in my last video, and since then it has seen a little bit of a sell off, with the MACD turning to the downside much more sharply than the Bitcoin chart. And with it seeing a run up of almost 100% in just over a month, I wouldn't be surprised if some people start taking profits, especially if Bitcoin does actually play out this resistance. And Ethereum could see a push back down to one of these previous resistance levels, which will hopefully be turned into support again before we start going back to the upside and it eventually breaks above this 200-day moving average, which, in my opinion, could signal the beginning of a parabolic altcoin season to finish out the bull market as Bitcoin sees that blue sky breakout above its previous all time high at about 109 or $10,000. As I said, we did get some pretty good news of JP Morgan saying that their clients can buy Bitcoin, but we do have some pushback on this pro crypto legislation being passed through the Senate. And in the past week, we also saw Coinbase being hacked. They didn't lose any funds, but they did lose some data, which means that a bunch of their customers' information has actually been stolen. And this came right on the heels of Coinbase being added to the S&P 500, which actually doesn't instill very much confidence in people to really start putting their money into Coinbase and signing up for the KYC, giving Coinbase their data if they can't actually keep it secure. MicroStrategy did add 7,390 more Bitcoin for $765 million, which usually would be really great news, but they just got hit with a class action lawsuit. And while it did look really great for Michael Saylor and his strategy, that they bought a whole bunch of Bitcoin at the bottom of the market and then they saw some astronomical gains, I think investors are going to become more and more nervous as he continues buying huge amounts of Bitcoin at elevated prices, which could cause them to lose a whole bunch of money whenever the bear market does eventually come. There's been a whole bunch of leverage being stacked onto the market, and when leverage gets to these astronomical levels, a lot of times that does indicate a local top because these big institutions that have recently entered the game are going to be taking advantage of that situation to liquidate people and make some quick cash. According to this article on Coindesk, these sudden price gyrations have wiped out over $460 million in long positions and $220 million in shorts. But leverage remains at elevated levels, and I wouldn't be surprised if we continue to see these institutions taking advantage of the situation and manipulating markets so that they can liquidate more and more people. The market has been taking on a whole lot more long positions, and the direction of max pain is now to the downside, with a whole bunch of people jumping the gun a little bit on us reaching the all time high. And now that the markets are reopened for a new week, if the market is going to inflict max pain, I think that that opportunity is now for them to liquidate some of those longs and push us back to the downside. So, in my opinion, I do expect us to see a little bit more consolidation here. But if you've been sidelined, then any kind of a dip down into the low $90,000 range, as long as we do hold this upward trending support line, is probably going to be a really great buying opportunity. But even then, most of the gains have already been seen for this bull market. And honestly, I don't really expect it to break much higher than that price target of about $120,000, especially if it does take us all the way until October to get there. Whenever we see pumps through the weekend, like we just did on Sunday, whenever markets reopen on Monday, these institutions are going to take advantage of that opportunity and take a little bit of profit. That combined with the possible buy the rumor, sell the news situation on the crypto genius bill that is expected to be passed through the Senate today, we could be seeing a short term sell off here in the next coming weeks. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Have we reached a local top and is the MACD crossing to the downside going to push us lower? Or are we about to see that blue sky breakout and enter into a parabolic altcoin season with markets not even giving us a chance to buy the dip? Either way, thank you guys so much for watching, and don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. But most importantly, don't forget to do only good every day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.